Okay, so you know what time it is. I've got to share my thoughts. I've got to share my thoughts on Stranger Things, Season 4. I have just finished the last episode, as in the last episode. You know, we had two parts of the season. We had part 1, which was episodes 1 through 7, and then part 2, which was 8 and 9, even though, you know, those two episodes were longer than I think any of the other episodes. So actually, no, that's not true, because I don't know. I think these episodes were way longer than the other ones, and together they were like 3 hours and 45 minutes, so very, very long episodes that I'm going to be discussing here, and it's full spoilers, okay? So mostly I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on the last episode. I'm going to talk about the season in general. So, what do I have to say about this episode? Holy shit, that was good. It's weird, because it was very good. I have things about the episode that kind of disappointed me. And of course, those are going to be the things that stick in your mind, you know. And when I do reviews of things, typically, when I name the negative things, and I only have a couple things that bothered me, that means I loved everything else. And it's really unfortunate that we, like, as human beings, tend to think of things in that way. It's like, well, here's the things that were wrong with it. And it's like, well, you're saying everything else was great. So let me start with the great. I'm going to have to hold myself back and just talk about the great. So, what was great about Stranger Things Season 4, Episode 9? Well, one word, characters. These characters, we've gotten to know them. They all get things to do here. And I have had previous moments in Stranger Things finales specifically where, like, they start going over they start discussing their feelings, and, like, that has pissed me off sometimes. I mean, okay, not pissed me off. It's just kind of irritated me a little bit, because I'm always thinking, is this really the time? Is this really the time and place to be talking about, your love confessions? Like, you have an important job to do. You've been together this whole season. You haven't done it. Now we're, like, there's a monster after us, and we're going to confess our feelings. I don't really feel that way this time, because I feel like these characters are in a scenario where they feel like they are going maybe to their deaths. And so it's the characters that do that are actually in danger. And for that reason, I kind of appreciate that some of the time. And also we get more conversations where the characters are just talking to each other in that downtime. So, pretty much everything, like, the characters are all playing off of each other. It's so hard to summarize it, because it was so well done, but the characters are all going off each other. So just going down the line, of course, you get Dustin and you get Eddie. Those two are definitely my favorite duo of this season, and like I said, I'm just going to go right into spoilers. So, of course, we lose Eddie in this episode. And at the end of the season, of course, because it is the last episode. And that was very sad, but I like that they thwarted our expectations a little bit with that, because you thought it was going to happen at one moment and it didn't. You thought he was just going to stick there behind and let the bats get him, but then he busts out and, he lets the bats chase him, and then you have a moment where you think that the bats are going to actually leave him and he's going to be saved, and then it turns out he's not. So that's, I think they did that super duper on purpose, because it's just the cliches. You can't have cliches at this point in the series, because people are just going to get tired of it. So Eddie and Dustin playing off of each other. Erica, she was kind of a side character, but she did what she needed to do. She was really good. Lucas and Max was probably my favorite romantic thing going on this season. Like, this is a horror / science fiction show, so I know it's strange to just keep talking about the characters, but, like, honestly, that's the characters are the reason why people like the show. The characters are the reason why this even works in the first place. Because if you don't give a shit about the characters, then you don't give a shit about the show, right? So I like that they went through a tough time. I like Max going into her feelings about, maybe I did want my brother to die. And that was a really dark thing that you don't really see that much in shows, And someone not only talking about being suicidal, but, maybe I wanted my brother to die. I mean, I didn't after he did, but I mean, before that, I always fantasized about something bad happening to him just because he treated me like shit for so long. That was really dark, and I think it was really appropriate. And I like their relationship. I 100% believe the Max and Lucas dynamic. I like that Max got hurt, because I've said this to several of my friends. If none of the kids get hurt this season, then they're just gonna be fucking immortal. Like, we're gonna know at this point, and I know I said this, and I don't even know if I'm gonna post this. I did another review of the first 7 episodes. I'm probably not even gonna post that, but I've said this before. Like, if the kids don't get hurt, and they're just indestructible, because how is it that everybody who is just an innocent bystander, like all these people keep getting killed, like by the dozens, right? Slash, the people who are quote unquote evil in the season, they keep getting killed by the dozens. But these kids who are, kids who are inexperienced, they haven't been through military training. I mean, well, 11 has, but none of the other kids have been through military training, and they're just actively going and seeking out these monsters and trying to kill them, and none of the kids have gotten hurt by that, even a little bit. Like, okay, they've gotten hurt, they've gotten a little banged up, like, Will got hurt the most, but also he was an innocent bystander before this. That was when he was not going to seek the monster. So, yeah, like these kids have been escaped. They've escaped this for far too long. So, like, it's a little annoying that they killed the character who just started this season, because it's like, we're gonna introduce a character so we can kill him, so he can be one of the characters, like one of the main cast that gets killed. But technically, he's not really one of the main cast because he hasn't been here since like season 1 or 2. So he's definitely the main cast this season, but it's like they probably brought him into this season just to kill him. So like, that's kind of annoying. But like, Max getting severely hurt is enough for me, as long as she doesn't pull a character from, I almost spoiled something from another show. There's a character from another show that I really like that got severely hurt and then was just like cool, and it was completely ridiculous. As long as they don't pull that character, and I think you'll know which character I'm talking about if you've seen that show on Netflix. But anyway, like, yeah, as long as they don't pull one of those where she's just like, the next season she's just gonna be fine. Like, I hope that she's like, of course, and I wouldn't hope this for a real person, right? But I hope that Max is either like has some broken limbs, or she's blind, or something. Something needs to happen from that interaction. All 11 did was start her heart again. I mean, putting aside the fact that she was out for like a minute, her heart was stopped for a minute. Like, putting aside the fact that medically speaking, she probably would have brain damage from that. I'll even forgive that. Like, I'll even forgive them, like, say, foregoing the brain damage, because just that would be really difficult to handle that appropriately and like not offensively for people who actually have brain damage. Like, having her play a character who's severely brain damaged, that probably just wouldn't be good for this. It's just not that kind of show, right? So, like, that is a serious problem that people have. But I mean, like, I can understand them not doing that in the show. I would forgive that, but like, having her just be unscathed from having her arms and legs broken, and having the blood come out of her face, like, I think she should have some sort of thing, some sort of lasting thing from that, and that would be good. That would be, they need to raise the stakes on this show. I've said this a million times in shows. If you have, and there's a show specifically that I watch, and if you watch this show, it's a certain sci-fi show, very popular sci-fi show, where they keep killing characters and bringing them back. If you have a show where you keep doing that, then death is no longer real. That's what I really hate about that, because it's nice to do it every once in a while. Like, you thought this character was dead, but we actually brought them back. That's nice every once in a while. But if if every damn time someone dies you bring them back, then you're just like, every time there's a death scene, it's not going to be impactful, because I'm like, okay, well, they're just going to bring this character back next season / next episode / next second, So, they need to not do that. For the stakes to be high, for this to be as emotional as it can be, there needs to be real consequences to this upside down shit, Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the characters. I've talked about the characters. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I am going to give, just because I want to try to keep this semi-orderly, so I'm going to go over a few more things. Yuri's quote-unquote redemption was perfect. Not overdone, not overdramatic, just, yeah, I've been kind of an asshole, I'm going to help out. I like that kind of thing. I love that kind of writing. I don't like contrivances. I don't like when you have a moment that's like, man, I was totally evil, but until like 5 seconds ago. It's just, Yuri he wasn't like an insane maniac or anything. He was just a shady guy who made some crappy deals with people that that victimized some innocent people. And I don't know that he ever actually killed anyone. I think he sold people out to the KGB, but he didn't kill anyone himself. Granted, selling someone out to the KGB might be just as good as killing them, but he had his moment where he's like, okay, this game's gone far enough. I'm just gonna help him out now. It's funny that it took so much convincing to get Yuri to that point. Because it's so obvious that they need to do this to save the world. He's seen the shit that the Demogorgon can do, I think. Wait, has he? I don't remember. But he at least knows people who know about this, right? It's really funny that he had to come around and be convinced by the other guy. I forget his name. It's something Hoff. But that was really funny. And it was really good. Joyce and Hopper... pretty much perfect. That dynamic was good. I like that whole story with, Hopper sending, cutting that deal with the guard, and then going to Yuri, and then Yuri betraying them, and Hopper initially making contact with Joyce through the Russian doll. And of course we get, the guy whose name I can never remember, Murray, okay. Thank God, I thought I was not going to remember his name again. Murray, helping out. His role in this show was perfect. In the episode, it was good. Like, in this episode, I think, if I'm not mistaken, all he really did was, back them up. He was, the driver, and he, went, woohoo, and then he, attacked some things a few times. He spoke in Russian to get the information. Murray's just kind of the tech guy at this point, but he's, he had so much character in the other episodes, he doesn't really need to show himself every single time through things. And this episode in general only got boring a couple times, where I thought, okay, we need to, but that was good. Okay, Nancy and Jonathan, that was the weirdest interaction probably in this episode. They're getting back together, kind of. And they're just like, are we okay? And she's like, yeah. And you're like, okay, well, we know that they're not. It's starting to get into the thing with them that, irritates me about the other things. I said it didn't happen very much, but it's okay, they're clearly not okay, right? And it's more realistic, yes, that they would be in denial for a while, but it's a little annoying for the audience when the characters are in denial about something. I'm not one of these people who thinks that just because something is more realistic, it's better in a show. If something is more realistic and it's also really annoying, then you probably should just, do something else with it. Or do something else realistic that's less annoying. But anyway, Jonathan and Will was where it was at. That's the dynamic, with the older brother and the younger brother. That's really what I was interested in with Jonathan. I basically don't care about Jonathan's love life anymore. As bad as that sounds. Jonathan and Will, they had probably the best heart-to-heart scene, where Jonathan basically says, if there's anything about you, even that I don't know, there's nothing that's going to make me stop loving you. And we know pretty much what Jonathan knows. They said it without saying it, and I'll get to that more later. But that moment was really great. I like also the dynamic with Jonathan and Mike and Will and their stoner friend. I just find that whole thing really funny. The stoner friend whose name I really should remember his name. But, he's my favorite new character, I think, besides Eddie. He's just so funny. His comedic timing is just perfect. It kind of makes me wonder where he was the previous seasons. I mean, I feel like this guy should have been a side character the whole time. Really great there. Susie was back for 3 seconds. It was nice to have her. I kind of wish they would have been in contact with her again. Yeah, again, not because it's more realistic that they would have been, because probably not. You know, it probably is more realistic that they would have contacted her once, and it would have been really hard to get back into contact with her when they're trying to run from the military and Vecna and whatever else. But, you know, it would have been more satisfying to see her back and be like, you know, you did it, or something, you know, just anything like that. So, you know, what other dynamics? Who else? Because that was the cool thing about this season too. We had so many pairs. We had like so many groups of people. You know, we've had in the past, you know, Mama Steve going out. If you hear this noise, by the way, it's because I have a blanket wrapped around me because it's cold, and I'm very sorry. We had Mama Steve driving the kids around. We had Hopper and his posse. It's really cool to have different. I feel like in this season we had different groups that we don't normally have together. Like Lucas and Nancy. Wait a minute. Lucas wasn't with... Wait, who was Lucas with? Oh, did I already forget? I just watched this episode. Okay, you had Lucas and Erica. Yeah, and then Nancy and Aaron, right? Like, that's not a group of people I would have expected to be together. Oh, and Dustin, right? So, you didn't even have the 4 kids together from this, you know, Dustin, Lucas, Elle, and Mike, and Will. I guess that's 5, isn't it? I can't count. Dustin, Lucas, Elle, and Mike riding on a bike to save a friend from the upside down. Those stranger things, you know we live in those stranger things. Bad lip reading. Stranger Things, go look it up. Anyway, so, dynamics, very, very good. I was just kind of talking like him, wasn't I? So, dynamics, really good. And then we've got, of course, the baddies and the former baddies. Now, the whole plot with the government chasing them, I'm just now realizing this in real time, but I'm pretty sure you could have cut that out. Like, I get that, I know why it's there, but between the thing with Russia and the Hawkins lab and that conflict within the Hawkins lab, I feel like they didn't really need the government there as well. The government was there to bust down the doors and shoot some people when the plot was going too slow. That's basically what the U.S. government did. And like, well, we have no way to get out of this situation and move them to the next scene. Boom, go, 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 pow, 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 you know. That's basically what their role was in this. Anyway, so that was all right. But the whole Hawkins thing, the Hawkins lab kind of looked in the beginning like it was going to be the most interesting thing in the season, because you started out with and then, you know, what have you done? And then, you know, dead kids. You know, they did that flash to dead kids like so many times. You know, it's just like, hey, just in case you forgot, here's the dead kids. You know, every time Eleven had a memory, it's like, yes, I'm sitting here, Mike, I'm sorry. 11, remember the time that you murdered those people? Yeah, that's, you know, it was hard to watch, and they made you watch it a million times. And then the thing that people were talking about that's the hardest to watch was actually the thing with Vecna, with him like breaking people's legs and shit. It's interesting because like I don't find the breaking of the arms and legs is the hardest thing to watch. I find I can't stand the breaking of the jaw. Like, the eye thing doesn't bother me all that much. The arms and legs don't bother. It's seeing someone open their mouth and their jaw get broken. Oh my god, I can't stand that. Like, that's the thing. It's just, maybe it's because I personally have, like, a misaligned jaw, and I have a lot of, like, my jaw pops and clicks because it's not lined up correctly, and it causes me to have ear pain. Like, I have a condition called TMJ, which is what I've just described. So seeing some, you know, and when I open my mouth too wide, it actually pops my jaw out of socket. When I yawn, my jaw pops out of socket. And I've had my jaw get stuck closed, and I've had my jaw get stuck open. So, like, I've had both of those things happen. And watching someone get their jaw broken, like, I just empathize with that way too hard. So that's why that gets to me. And I'm not sure that anyone else besides that first girl. I wanted to call her Stacy. Was her name Stacy? Was that her name? Or was it... No, it was Chrissy. Right? There's too many characters in this show. No, I'm just kidding. I think her name was actually Chrissy. Yeah, it seemed like she's the one who ever got her jaw broken, I thought. But oh my god, I hated that. Yeah. I've pointed this out to people. If this show was 22 minutes long, 23 minutes long, there would have been 34 episodes in this season. That means if this was Avatar The Last Airbender, this would have been, like, most of 2 seasons. So, like, when you watch Avatar Season 1 and Season 2, that's, like, you know, all of Season 1 and, like, 3/4 of the way through Season 2. So, that's why this... Even though it was only 9 episodes, it feels like so long because it was. Like, thinking about that shit with, you know, Lucas in the basketball shit, that feels like it was like 2 seasons ago. Because it was just so long ago, you know. Like, this season of Stranger Things, I think, if I'm not mistaken... Well, let's see, the first season was 8 episodes, so that's basically 16 normal episodes of television, like 22 minutes maybe. So, give or take a few, this season was like twice as long as season 1. Which is insane, you know? Like way longer. Like twice at least the running time of season 1. Maybe not at least, but, you know, around twice the running time of season 1. So, it's basically 2 seasons. And we got one more, and I really hope next season is this long. I really hope they don't shortchange us and make a short little season next one, but I don't think they will. For season 5, which will be the final season, if you didn't know. I just want to prepare you for that. But, yeah, okay. So, I've talked about the characters. I've talked about some of the tropey things. What should I talk about next? I don't want to get to the things that bothered me yet. I want to talk about some more awesome shit, some more awesome moments. Okay, so another awesome moment. I just have to say this. Master of Puppets. Because why? Why? Like, there was absolutely no reason. Like, it was completely unnecessary for them to stick in a guitar playing Master of Puppets in the middle of the Upside Down, having an Upside Down Metallica concert. It's so self-indulgent, and I fucking love it. It's just amazing. Like, that's the kind of shit that would irritate some people, but it's just, like, the show is so goofy at this point. Not goofy as in, like, it's not serious, even though that's what goofy usually means. I mean, it's goofy as in, like, it allows itself to be campy sometimes, because it knows it's an 80s show. It's self-aware of the fact that it's 80s references. That was a terrifying fucking noise that just happened outside my house. I don't know what that was. Anyway, I think people are just getting used to the fact that this show is not only getting, you know, it's playing into the horror aspect, but it's... Why am I talking with this weird lisp? I don't know, man. I did brush my teeth earlier and use dental floss, and you don't care about this. It's allowing itself to get more into the horror tropes, but it's also having a lot more comic relief, or not even necessarily comic relief, just flat out 80s references, which I am not opposed to. I'm not opposed to self-indulgent shit that the directors put in there. A lot of people don't like that stuff, but like we got like Kate Bush, and we've got Metallica. And we even had, like, in one of the seasons, I think it was season 2, we had Ghostbusters over the end credits, you know. We had, okay, I have to talk about this too. It's going to be, okay, I'm about to have a semi-spoiler for a Stephen King book. I'm going to tell you it is not a huge spoiler. It is just something that happened, one of the scares from a Stephen King book. I have to talk about this because there was a very clear reference to one of those things. So if you don't want to hear what that is, then I guess skip a couple minutes, I guess. But I'm going to talk about this, okay? It's from a Stephen King book and from a Stephen King movie. and I almost never make specific references. You've heard me step over things before and say, well, this is like this other thing that you know what it is. But I'm going to talk about specifically for a second. Okay, here we go. The balloons popping in the like in the gymnasium, the exploding balloons that were blood. Like, I cannot believe they did that, because that is so clearly a reference to It. Because that exact same thing happens in It during a fantasy. Like, someone is having, like, or not a fantasy, but, like, someone's having, like, basically a vision given to them by one of the antagonists in the story. And they have this vision of the balloons, you know, popping and blood goes everywhere. And I just can't believe they did that. It was so funny. Last episode, when he was asking for a disguise, and like, I think it was either Steve or Eddie comes around the corner in a fucking Michael Myers mask. That was so funny. Like looking around the side of the thing, just like Michael Myers does, like doing that peeking around the side of it, in a Michael Myers mask. That was so funny. I love shit like that. And then I have to talk about too, they put the Stranger Things theme to Kate Bush. They did a remix of Kate Bush with the Stranger Things theme, which you don't get more self-indulgent than that. Like, you can tell that the creators are having fun, but I don't mind that, though. I don't mind the creators having fun. I don't mind that in the slightest, because that's what they should be doing. You know, they should be having a shit ton of fun making this, or else it's not going to be fun for the audience. It has to be a love project. It can't be a calculated thing to say, well, this is what people want here, and this is what... Like, I don't think Netflix was like, yes, and then you must put the Stranger Things theme with this, and you must have Michael Myers, and by the way, you must have Robert Englund playing, you know, Victor Creel, and you also have to have the exploding balloons from It. You know, it's so cool how many references, and then, of course, you know, fucking Master of Puppets in the Upside Down. I mean, how can you not get down to fucking Master of Puppets jamming out in the fucking Upside Down? Did I say fucking enough times for you? It's just, as soon as that guitar riff started, and I'm not like the hugest Metallica fan. I do really like that song, but like, it was so unexpected that it took me a second to place it. If you just played that riff for me, and I'd be like, after a couple seconds, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's Master of Puppets. But they started the, you know, and it took me a second to fucking place it. But then once they got to the da-da-da-da-da-da-da, I was like, oh my god, they're about to, this is Master of Puppets. This is insane. You know? And you got the demon bats flying around. It's like, you know, I can't say anything else good about that. It's so good. Actually, a really funny moment in the episode for me was I had this total brain fart in the episode, and it's I feel stupid for this, but I feel like also it's not, I don't feel that stupid, because it was weird, but just when they had Hopper walk in through Eleven's room, and then she looks at him, like, I'm like, why is she looking at him like that? I'm like, oh right, he was in Russia. Because it was Hopper's house, it was Hopper's cabin, and then Hopper just walked through the door in Eleven's room, and I'm like, what's the big deal? And I'm like, oh right. that whole thing about getting Hopper back, because I you know, like, you saw him get into the helicopter, or at least you saw, I don't remember if you saw him get into the helicopter. You saw the helicopter in Russia, you know, and then Hopper was just in Indiana, and I was like, oh, there's Hopper. And I remember, Joyce getting to reunite with her sons was great. Is there anything? I'm sure there's some shit I'm missing. When Max got her headphones stepped on in the attic, I was like, no, Kate Bush, no. Like, I was like, oh, we're fucked now. You know, I really did not think they were actually going to kill Max, because it was so, like, the fact that they just killed Eddie and they killed the Satanic Panic kid, that just made me think that, like, okay, well, there's been enough sacrifice, there's been enough atonement in this episode for their good fortune. their good fortune was atoned because someone died, and then randomly, like they, Max got hurt in the middle of that, and then she's like, I can't see, I can't. But I mean, like, but she sounded fine. She was like, I can't see anything and I can't move. And I thought that was just because, she just got her legs and her arm broken. Of course she can't move, right? And then she was blind because of the blood coming, and then she also went limp. And I'm like, what? I really wish they would have, maybe it's because they don't know if she's going to come back. Maybe they did a hopper where they're not sure if the actor's going to come back. Slash actress is going to come back. But I really wish they would have just had her kind of be fine, be able to talk but not be able to see or move her arms or legs. That would have been it would have been fucked up, but it would have been a lot better than having 11 do again, not gonna spoil it, but if you've seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. As soon as she did this, there is a moment from a movie where a character dies and another character reaches through a void and starts the character's heart back up. And I'm like, that's what they're doing? That movie didn't even come out in the 80s. It couldn't have been a reference to that, but it's it kind of felt like that, so they did that. Anyway, I kind of did like the mind battle that they had. They kind of did that before with they did that a little bit with Max and Vecna, but this one was a full out mind battle, what's real and what's fake. I've seen this actually play out in not just one but many sci-fi shows. There was if you don't know these fucking shows, I'm gonna annoy the shit out of you because I keep doing this thing where I'm like, well, there was this other show where they did this. But look, there was a special of a certain sci-fi show where a character was trapped in their memories and didn't know what was real and didn't know what was fake, and characters outside of that character were trying to bring them back, and so I've seen this too with the what's real, what's fake, especially when you have characters plugged into modules and stuff, and they think that or dream things, where a character's trying to figure out, with you got that, horror antagonist who is getting into people's dreams. And they don't know what's real and what's fake. They don't know when they're really awake. We've seen it a million times, so it was fine. But I'm glad they didn't dwell on it too long. They kind of did with 11. 11 was going through the skate park and shit, and I'm like, okay, this isn't particularly. It's one of the moments where the story started to get a little bit boring. It wasn't particularly interesting, but I was like, it's fine. But then when it finally got to the bleacher battle with Vecna. And 11, and her being like, whoa, bleacher throw, and then, Max trying to come up behind Vecna and hit him with a plank, which, I'm going to do it again, I'm so sorry, but we had another show come out this year with a character who foolishly tried to walk up to a very powerful villain and take him out from behind and just was immediately thwarted and thrown around. It was almost like a carbon copy of that scene. It was kind of funny, actually. But, seeing that, I was like, okay, I appreciate that she did that, but that was also, pretty stupid. But, I'm glad she tried to do something. And then 11 was there. It was like, ooh, and then Vecna still knew she was there, and I'm like, hey, can we stop trying to sneak up on the guy who can read people's thoughts? It's just, just throw him in your mind or something. Anyway, I'm acting like I'm shitting on that scene. I'm 100% not. I'm just being silly, but it was very cool, very very powerful. Every time that 11 confronts Vecna, I'm glad that they actually explained how Vecna got the way he is. Because we know that those particles, it's because I said this before. I will not accept just a character going into the Upside Down and just turning into a monster. Okay, and yes, I know that it's a sci-fi show and it's not based on real life, okay, but within the rules of the show that you have established, we have not seen a thing where it's just a character can just, take life-threatening burns and then get thrown into the Upside Down and then just be okay. There has to be some reason why they survived that. Well, Vecna kind of went into detail about that. So we know that he created the Mind Flayer, which I really hope that gets explained better. But he, he's controlling the particles, and he did say that let me be the monster I wanted to be, and so I think perhaps that he got infected with something from the Upside Down, which helped make him what he was. It made his voice very deep like this, Instead of being up here like this when he's talking to Eleven in his normal voice, Papa doesn't tell the truth. And there's, hello, I think he probably got infected by some kind of something that infected his mind. It's not that it made him evil or anything, but just that it helped, And then he made the Mind Flayer, I guess, meaning he is the Mind Flayer. I don't know. And someone let me know if you know. I can look it up, but because now that I've caught up on Stranger Things, I'm not worried about spoilers anymore. But someone let me know if actually they mentioned in the previous seasons if one was actually a thing or not, because that seems like the kind of thing that would be hard to Google, even if I do Google it, which I will. But it feels like one of those questions where Google's not going to know what the hell I'm asking. So if you know that, let me know. So we had 11 facing Vecna explaining, what happened with him and the Mind Flayer. Now, there's one thing here it's not really things that bothered me. This is just actually something I don't understand that probably makes sense. But so 11 was talking to Brenner, God rest his soul. 11 was talking to Brenner, and she was like, you opened all those portals, all those people died because you kept wanting to look for him. And I'm like, okay, so did Brenner open those portals, or did Vecna open those portals with the monsters? Because they kind of imply that it's both ways, don't they? Because at first it seems like they're saying that, okay, the reason why all these people kept dying was because Brenner was going through there and he kept poking holes in this rift through the aid of his, underlings, which were his staff and by extension the kids, because it was their talent that they were using, right? And the staff were carrying it out, using those people to get into this to look for one, or whatever the hell his name was. I remember, was it just, I'm not even trying to remember that because it's going to annoy you. Henry, that's his name. Sure, I find Henry, so did he do that, or did Henry seek out to find holes in the rift, and every time that 11 opened a rift, it was because Vecna was reaching out to her? Which is it? That's confusing to me. I'm sure I'll rewatch the season and I'll understand it more the second time. But that's something to think about, I think. I'm going to be honest with you. Okay, I'm going to get into some things I don't like and some things I still do like. I haven't gone through absolutely everything here, but I feel like if I just hold this back right now, it's going to mess up the whole thing. It's going to mess up my train of thought. So here's what I don't like about Vecna creating the Mind Flayer. It demystifies it in a way. And I know that was something that was always bound to happen with the Upside Down, but I feel like the explanations I wanted for the Upside Down would not have been explanations that totally explain things. They would have been like, okay, this is the kind of thing that happens when you, for example, okay, let's say parallel dimensions can open up, and the Upside Down, the animals in the Upside Down are just kind of they're just kind of like infections. You start with your basic microorganisms, and then they develop into like the Dimaslugs, and then you get the Dimadogs, and then you get the Demogorgon, and then you get Doug Dimmadome, one of the Dimsdale Dimmadome. So stupid, but you get those things, right? You get those different steps, and then the rifts are just like a wound in the space-time continuum, and those are like the infection, right? That we've seen that in other sci-fi shows. Not that they have to copy other sci-fi shows, but it's a good explanation. It works. It's taking something that we understand and using it to create an analogy for something that is not something we have experience with, which is a parallel dimension. We don't have experience with a parallel dimension, but we do have experience with, a wound in skin and the different things that can develop in there, or, having secluded environments where things can evolve. We understand that, right? Because it would be like a frontier, there's no humans there. So, that explanation would have been really great, but instead we get like this, okay, the particles were there, that's fine, but I just kind of created everything by hand in this dimension. Well, then that begs the question, like, okay, well, why did you create these? So if you created the Mind Flayer, does the Mind Flayer just employ these monsters? Maybe this actually isn't as straightforward as I thought, but like, maybe the Mind Flayer is the only thing that Vecna created, and then the Dimadogs and the Demogorgons and the Dimaslugs are just like things that the Demogorgon or the Mind Flayer uses to connect with those things. But if that's the case, why would they already be connected? If he's the one who made the Mind Flayer, then why would these things... Because it seems like when you hurt the Demogorgon or anything that, that's in our world, it hurts Vecna. If you cut a vine, he'll know about it. If you burn the vines, it will... Because, when the Mind Flayer was inside of Will Byers and they burned the vines, it caused him tremendous pain, right? So does that mean that's by design, or does that just were the things already connected in that way, and then the Mind Flayer just kind of made a portal for them, like made a not a portal, like a processing hub for all those things? Is the Mind Flayer just the CPU, and like the Demogorgon's like the printer? Like, I don't know, man. And then Vecna would just be like the operating system. I don't know. I don't know. It could be like that, I guess. But it just to me, like, I know I said it demystifies it and then went on to say, I don't understand it. But it's just, I think that explanation for how the Mind Flayer got there is just too simple. Like, yes, the Mind Flayer has never really looked like a real spider. It does look like a crude child's drawing, like, okay, but it doesn't feel like it was planned from the beginning. And it may well have been, even if it was planned from the beginning. The fact that it doesn't feel like it was planned means that it might have been poorly executed, So I'm not entirely sure that I like that. And of course, the Duffer Brothers are just bound to what I personally like. No, but they're not. But, that's just my own opinion. I have no idea what people think of these last two episodes. I haven't looked up a thing that a soul has said, because someone was going to have to spoil it. Someone's going to spoil this, and I was going to have to go smack them in the face. So I didn't look up anything. But it's something to think about. I'm not sure what to make of that, like, I made the Mind Flayer thing. Like I've seen that in other things, right? It's just like, well, I made this thing that you're afraid of, I made it. It's just a way to make myself sound like a badass, even though I haven't been here for the past 3 seasons. I'm here this season, and the thing that you feared, I made it. Like, okay, that just kind of seems like a way to retcon in this new character. Like, I kind of like the idea of the Mind Flayer not having anything that's controlling it. I don't, and that doesn't mean, by the way, that the Mind Flayer has to be like all powerful. I think there should be a way to beat it. But I think the Mind Flayer was already a cool enough villain. It's like, it's so vague and yet so specific in what it does. Like, it's very specific in what it does to the characters but it's vague in that it seems like almost like a demonic force, the Mind Flayer. And now we know that Vecna just came to the Upside Down and was just like, bloop, 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 bloop. I'm going to make this out of clay, doop, 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 put it in the oven, pop it out. So look, it's a Mind Flayer. Like, I don't like that explanation. I really don't. I don't like the Mind Flayer. Like, I wish they actually would have done it maybe just slightly differently, and I would have excused it if it was. And maybe this is the way they were doing it, and I just missed it, and I just misinterpreted. But if they would have actually, like, showed the fact that Vecna has all these tentacles, and he's just like, I am the Mind Flayer, that seems like it would have been like such an obvious twist. Like, oh shit, Vecna is the Mind Flayer. Like, that's why he has all these tentacles and stuff. I really hate when there's a show and I think of a better ending for it than it actually had. That just pisses me off. But, like, you know, that would have been a better twist, I think. Like if it would have, you know, pulled away from the Creel house, and then, like, the Creel house would have, like, morphed into the Mind Flayer, and then you just see, like, oh my god, Vecna's been the mind behind the Mind Flayer. Like, that would have been a good twist. But instead we just had this, nope, I made the Mind Flayer. Like, you know, like, I don't know. That I don't like that. Like, and I get, like, it's the master of puppets. I get, you know, the connection there, and I didn't mention that earlier. I get the master of puppets. You know, it's like he's puppeting the Mind Flayer, but it's like, ugh, that's. I just think those kinds of twists are so lazy sometimes. Like, well, he was actually just working for this other person. Like, dude, come on, don't do that. And it's just a little disappointing, though, because I do like the Upside Down being mysterious. I do like, you know, like I said, even if we got, like the kind of thing that happened to Vecna, where he fell into the Upside Down and then he got infected with these particles or whatever. It's like he voluntarily took them, right? It's not like they found him and infected him, but he voluntarily took them. That kind of explanation to me, even if it would have been like microorganisms or like goo or something, that would have been sufficient. I wouldn't have needed more. You know, or if they would have had like some kind of thing where it's like, or they, not even really something, but like when you see them walking through the house and the lights are coming on and they have certain ways that they can track like the electrical impulses on the other side, and they have a plan and they can work it, and they have a system where they actually know how to control the lights and shit in the other dimension, like that quote-unquote explanation is a good enough explanation for me. I don't need to know the circuitry of the Upside Down. I don't need to know exactly how the Mind Flayer does everything. I don't need to know, you know, why the Demogorgon has 4 flaps. But when you introduce some kind of explanation like, I made this and I'm the mastermind behind it, okay, well then you do have to explain those things now, because there's a mind doing it. It's not just nature, right? So that's why that bothers me. Okay, that was one thing that bothered me. By the way, everything in the episode, like the visuals and everything like that, was still really fucking cool, right? It's just that detail bothered me. What else? So, undoubtedly, this is going to be the thing that a lot of people talk about first when they review the episode. I try not to be like this, and I think I was trying too hard not to be like, oh, I'm not, you know, woke, I'm not politically correct. But fuck that, okay? I don't really care what insecure people have to say about what I care about in an episode, okay? If it detracted from the experience, it detracted from the experience. So I'm going to talk about this. They should have confirmed that Will was gay. They should have done that. And they didn't. Now, Aaron and I'm sorry, I forget the girl's name. She really wasn't in it that much. But Aaron and her love interest, that confirmation for me, at first I was like, well, why weren't they more explicit with it? But I kind of get it, because this is the 80s and they're in a public place, right? Granted, you know, I don't like the excuse that people use for, you know, 80s shows or 80s based shows. It's like, well, it's the 80s, no one was openly gay. Well, if you think that, then you are just completely mistaken about history, right? We had openly gay characters in TV shows in the 70s, you know, so It's not like it was a thing that wasn't talked about, especially among like since when have teenagers ever followed traditional roles, right? So in private conversations especially, I can see teenagers talking very openly about being gay, and they did early. They were talking about, like, Nancy and Aaron and Steve were talking about it, whether that girl liked girls or not. They were talking about that openly. That was fine. And so that's why when they got to that place with the shelter, and there's tons and tons of people around, they're kind of giving each other a knowing look, and they're not being very explicit with it, but you know that they know. You know that they've just figured it out. And Steve is watching from afar, and he figures it out. So that was fine. Especially since they were explicit already talking about Aaron and the fact that, well, not really the fact, but trying to figure out whether that girl would be into Aaron or not. Or girls in general, I should say. Not into, just because you're into girls doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be into Aaron. But, whether she was into girls, right? They were already explicit about that. Will, they kept, it seemed like they were going to, like building it up, and then they just, it was fucking nothing. Like, it wasn't nothing, right? Because they had that conversation with Will and Jonathan, which was awesome. Where Jonathan's like, you can tell me anything. And then they hug. And then he doesn't tell him, And then Will is there. Or Will and Mike are together. And earlier, you had that conversation with Will and Mike where he's talking about Eleven, but he's clearly also talking about himself. He's saying, 11 was just afraid of losing you. And that's why she's not been so close, and that's why she's been kind of distant, because she appreciates you so much, and she doesn't want to lose you, which is why she's afraid that she will. And that's why she's been distant. Clearly, he's talking about himself, because he's getting very emotional. He's saying, like, yeah, this is me. This is why I've been kind of an asshole to you. I mean, which I don't, by the way, really think that Will was an asshole to Mike at all. I think, if anything, people were assholes to Will. But, he was talking about himself in his conversation. And then they did not pay it off. And they had a conversation. This almost makes me think that there was a deleted scene where they did talk about it, because you had him and Mike raking leaves together, and then people weren't, I thought maybe one character was going to step away and they were just going to talk. Like, they had ample opportunity to actually have that conversation where or at least... And maybe, like, having that conversation with Mike wouldn't have worked, because I don't know how Mike would feel about that. If Will said, like, if he told Mike, like, I have feelings for you, I don't know how Mike would take that. I mean, Mike is not a bad character, but it's the mid-'80s, and he is, like, a teenager, and I know I said earlier that teenagers talk about this openly, but that doesn't mean that every teenager back then, like, agreed with it, right? That's a conversation we were kind of still having until very recently with a lot of people, and even still some people who are more closed-minded are like, well, I don't know if I agree with it. You hear that line a lot, but, I don't know if Mike would have been as open-minded as Jonathan, maybe. Like, maybe Mike would have been a little freaked out by it and said, that's really creepy or something. Like, it'd be really fucking weird if he did this at that point, and it would make him significantly less likable. But I could see it. If we're being, here comes that word again, realistic, I can see them doing that. I wouldn't like it, but I could see them doing it. But Jonathan and Will not having that conversation at all, when in a season that's this long, that was just lame, man. Like, they should have confirmed it, or suppose that Will is asexual. They could have confirmed that, but I don't think he is at this point, because there are some people saying that they thought that Will may be asexual, but I'm like, okay, every time that Mike and Elle are having a moment together, like, Will just looks miserable, right? Will's just looking at them like, and, like, you don't do that really in a TV show unless you have feelings. Unless it's just like, maybe it's, or okay, maybe I am reading it wrong, because maybe it's like a situation where Will is like, I'm not interested in anything like that, romantic, I just want to have my friend back, and he's focusing on all this stupid shit from my perspective. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But I feel like it was, it's been long enough. I mean, we had in the very first episode of Stranger Things, we had a reference from Joyce saying that the other kids picked on him and called him, that word, right? Which would basically mean, he's either gay or some kind of feminine or something, like they planted that seed way back in the first season, in the first episode, in like the first 10 minutes of the show, right? And we are now at the end of the 4th season, which was twice as long as the first season. So it's time, man. It's like, either do something with it or stop teasing it. Either just drop it completely and just forget about it, or confirm it. Like, it's just annoying at this point. And yes, there is a broader point that I agree with, and it's true that I think representation is important, because I feel like in a lot of shows we get, lesbian characters, and we hardly ever get, male gay characters. And in like any other season where they would have said something like, okay, we had confirmed Aaron in the last season, and this was just bolstering that. We wanted to make sure we could do justice to Will being gay, so we didn't stick that in the end of the season because of time. In another season on Netflix, I would have understood that. But this season was so goddamn long, and they had so many side plots. It was basically a Stephen King book. That I'm like, you had time. You had time for a 70-second conversation where Will basically said, Mike, I have feelings for you, and Will said something like, well, I like girls, but I understand, and I'll always be your friend, and I don't think any less of you. Like, they could have done some shit as simple as that, or like, maybe they could have had a scene with, I'm literally writing Stranger Things on the fly here, but we could have had a scene with Will and Jonathan where they're talking, and, like Jonathan finds Will crying, and he's like, what's the problem? And then, Will is really distraught, and he's like, it's Mike. And then Jonathan says, like, you like him, don't you? And then Will kind of breaks down again, and he's like, it's okay, and just puts his arm around him. He's like, it's okay. I'm your brother. I love you no matter what. And I don't think of you any differently. Like, it could have been something so simple and easy like that, you don't need to have, like, Moses parting the waters, and then a giant sign coming down from heaven that descends on Will that says, this boy is gay. Like, you don't need anything like that, man. It can just be like a really fucking simple side conversation. So and fuck you if you call me politically correct for that, okay? I don't care at this point, all right? Representation in shows is important. It's good. It's not fucking creepy. I don't care what the fuck you think about that, okay? It's a thing that's fine to have in shows. If we're going to have straight couples telling each other they love each other, it's fine to have gay couples saying they love each other. And you don't have to just imply it all the time. If people want to fucking unsubscribe because they don't like whatever the fuck them. I went into a totally different direction. I didn't mean to go there. But yeah. Okay, so those are two things that bothered me. They didn't confirm the thing with Will, and they had the Mind Flayer thing be explained. Okay. Anyway. Overall, though, more positivity. Just like I said, the way it ended, I liked the ending. That was so ominous and stuff. The only bad part about the ending of this season is that, or the ending of this episode and series in general, or season, is that I don't want to wait for season 5 now. I do not want to wait for season 5. I want to watch it immediately. I want to watch episode 1 of season 5 tomorrow. Like, because it ends on such a cliffhanger that, like, it's okay to end a season on a cliffhanger if it's like, well, should I even talk about this? Probably not, because it'd be kind of a spoiler, but there's an animated show that I really like. My favorite animated show of all time. And it ended one of the seasons on a cliffhanger. And it was a fantastic cliffhanger because it told you, like, okay, something bad happened, but everything is basically not resolved, but everything has a place. Everything's sitting somewhere. You can stand to have things wait because everything just got demolished, but you at least know where everyone's standing. You know who's doing what, you know where everybody is, you know all this shit, right? But it's uncertain what's going to eventually happen to them because a bunch of bad things just happened, and it's kind of a cliffhanger. That's a good cliffhanger. This I consider to be a bad cliffhanger. Because, okay, I really find it really interesting that I talked about how much I love that scene and then talked about it being bad. It's not really bad in a bad way. I say it's a bad cliffhanger. It's a bad cliffhanger for me. It's not a bad cliffhanger from the show, because it is very exciting. It makes me want to come back. It was well done. I'm just saying, for me personally, I don't want to wait now because, or maybe it was a really good cliffhanger for that reason, because it's like we don't know what's going to happen in the next few seconds. I don't necessarily like that kind of cliffhanger. If season 5 were already out, I wouldn't mind it at all, because then I would just watch the next episode. But I can't do that, because now we have to wait maybe 2 fucking years, man. I'm not saying that because it got confirmed or anything, but typically, Stranger Things comes out every 2 years, at least, if not longer. I mean, well, let me think, because Stranger Things 1 came out in 2016. Stranger Things 2, was it 2018 or 2017? I don't know. And I'm pretty sure Stranger Things 3 was 2019, right? It would have had to have been. Stranger Things 3 was 2019. So, one of those years, we got back to back, right? Because it was 2016, either 2017 and then 2019 maybe. But, and then after 2019, we had to wait 3 years for 2022, I think. Unless Stranger Things 3 came out in 2020. I don't fucking remember, guys. But either way, we've had to wait multiple years, and I really hope we don't have to do that again. I really hope we get Stranger Things 3 in 2023. Stranger Things 3. I hope we get Stranger Things 5 in 2023. But even then, guys, that's like a year, man. I don't want to wait a fucking year to find out what happens in the next few seconds. When the clouds overtake Hawkins, is lightning going to start shooting down and shocking people? Are we going to get, is the Mind Flayer going to fall from the sky? Is Eleven going to start charging down the field and like attacking things? What's going to happen? Is the Mortal Kombat, sign going to fall from the sky? Like, if they would have ended this season with the Mortal Kombat theme, I would have been like, that's not even the 80s, man. That would have been like, I would have just given it a perfect score at that point. That would have been so great. But yeah, I know they're not gonna do that, but that would have been so funny. Or the Street Fighter, whatever. Round 1, fight. Which is Mortal Kombat, not Street Fighter. Anyway, yeah, that would have been really cool. But I don't want to wait. I really don't, and I'm going to have to. So anyway, having knocked it for those couple things, it's basically perfect except for a couple things. There's really but that Will thing to me, it's weird because it's a sci-fi series, right? But that Will thing was really disappointing to me. It was really disappointing. So, I'm still going to give it a fucking 8, man. 8 out of 10. But I tentatively am disappointed about the Mind Flayer thing, because I just think it wasn't a very good twist. But who knows? Like, we literally introduced a whole new fucking villain this season, so maybe that's why I don't really want to judge that too much, because I don't know what the Duffer Brothers are gonna do next season with this. I almost wish that the season would have ended with episode 7, and then we just could have gotten the rest of a big ass fucking season 5. I'm talking And we got like fucking 16 episodes, all 2 hours long, you know? Some ridiculous shit like that. That would have been really cool. But, you know, it's... I don't know what they're going to do with the Upside Down next season. They might reveal something where you're like, oh, now that totally makes sense. So I don't know that. But like, the will thing is not a problem with me having to wait. The problem is that I do have to wait. It's been long enough. They should have just confirmed it. But it's still 8, man. 8 out of 10. And you gotta love Kate Bush mixed with the Duffer Brothers Stranger Things theme. I mean, who the fuck? And then you get Master of Puppets, too? Who could argue against that? You know? Like, Metallica concert in the Upside Down. I just can't get over that. With bats. The only thing that would have made that better was if you would have had Ozzy in the Upside Down, you know, biting the head off of a bat. That's the only thing that would have been better. But that, you know, that, I'm not saying why, but that might not have been well received in 2022. So, you know, so anyway. Stranger Things 4. What did you think? I got an 8 out of 10, man. I'm glad I watched this shit. I'm so glad that we got more Stranger Things. And I will, even though I was disappointed by a couple things, I will gladly watch Stranger Things 5. I'm going to watch the fuck out of Stranger Things 5 when it comes out. This is the best Netflix show. I don't care what anyone says. This is the best show on Netflix. And they should have done weekly episodes. Because then we could have had more time to appreciate every single well-crafted episode. That's what I really like about things like The Mandalorian, is that you get weekly episodes, so you can go and ask someone, did you see this week's episode of The Mandalorian? Just like you do with classic TV. And you can talk about it. But they just, you know, they release 7 episodes at once. But at least with these ones, like, these 2 episodes were really kind of one long episode, if you think about it. That was like almost a 4-hour movie. So I'm going to be talking to people about this. I'm just recording this review so I can get my thoughts out. I'm going to be going out and talking to people about this, and I'm going to see what they think. Until next time, thank you for listening to my long-ass rant about a long-ass season of a long-ass show on Netflix called Stranger Things. I will see you guys later. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.